Okay, so welcome back to the Ultimate Trade Analyzer. On this video, we're going to discuss how we go about setting up our worksheet so that we can enter data. So far, we've been looking at some data that's already been entered in with a crude oil 610 tick chart and a strategy that I back-tested about 350 trades or so. So let's say now that we want to go about back-testing something different, starting from a fresh spreadsheet. So in this video, we're going to learn how to do that. We're going to teach you how to clear the log and then go through some of the user-defined parameters that you're going to need to enter in order to get your sheet tuned up to the market and time frame you're going to backtest. The first thing we want to do is we want to save this as a new name. So we're going to go up to the File menu, which is slightly off this video screen, and there you can see Save As, and we're going to go ahead and save it as, and let's go ahead and we'll just do like a GBP USD, say we're going to backtest a pound-dollar Forex chart. And so we'll want to give this a name that we can identify. And so now we've got a carbon copy of the last sheet. The first thing we're going to do now is go ahead and clear the log. And so we pointed out to you earlier this really nifty little button, and it's going to give you a double warning because it really wants to make sure you're sure that you want to clear this data. So we'll click through both those warnings and watch what happens. Okay, now that we've cleared the log, you can see that there's no data in the data log. Everything's blank, and look above and you'll notice in the statistics area above that everything is 0. You don't see any statistics, obviously, because there are no trades. So the first thing you should do is go up to File and save your spreadsheet. Go ahead and quickly save it. Okay, so now that we've saved it, we're starting with a fresh new spreadsheet. And what we're going to do is we're going to assume that we're going to backtest a Forex cross, the GBP USD. And so we want to get in the habit of labeling and entering all the preliminary stuff right off the bat. So we're going to go up to cell B2 where it says symbol CL, and we're going to change that to the new symbol that we're now going to start backtesting. So that's going to be GBP USD. And we'll go ahead and assume we're looking at a 144 tick chart, or you could even look at a range bar if you want. This doesn't really affect much. All this does is tell you what kind of chart it is. So you could put in there, for example, a 0.0005 range, for example. So the important thing to know is those are just text fields, and it's really meant for you to title your spreadsheet. Now, H1 is a very important field because that's where you're going to determine your dollar per point. In this case, it would be per pip. And we're going to assume we're going to trade one full-size Forex contract. And so we're going to give it $10 per pip. And so we'll put a 10 in there. And then we can go ahead and assume that we're going to use a starting capital of $15,000, say. Now, as far as capping our contracts, I mean, this is Forex, and it's the sky's the limit, really. But we're not really going to need to concern ourselves with L1 until we actually get into the fixed fractional money management feature. We're going to talk about that in another video. Also, you might want to get in the habit of putting in trade costs. It's not going to really affect what we're talking about in this video, but I do want to point out that in H3 and H4, you can put in your round turn, either commission or spread costs. You can either put in commission there, you can put in spread costs for slippage. It's really up to you, but those are two fields where you can put in trade costs. We'll just keep it blank for now, actually. All right, so that leads us to the areas around rows 21 through 25. Let's go over to column I, the setup type. Now, I was using labels to name the type of trades, and I talked about this a little bit on the backtest video that you can watch apart from this. I always use B for basic. You could even type in the word basic if you want. The important thing to know is that whatever you type into these 5 fields from 21 down to 25, it's going to show up in the drop-down menu below on your data line. So when you enter in a trade on, say, row number 30 or 31, right, when you type into column A, it's going to give you the menu list of what you just set up above. And that's so you can label your trades. So we're going to assume that we're trading the HVMM 2010. We really don't have an OSOB set up. So we're going to change that and call that PB for pullback. We're going to leave the trailer in there in case we do want to come in with a position with a trailing stop. And we can change the RE, which is another word for, I use that for re-entry. But let's go ahead and change that to second attempt. We'll just put in a 2ND. And then we know anytime we use that label, it's going to be a trade that is a second attempt on a prior trade that failed. And the only reason why I'm telling you this is just to kind of give you ideas on how you can use this powerful feature of the spreadsheet. By labeling your trades the way you want, you can specifically track the results of each of those trade types. So that gives you a lot of power and flexibility. We also added this exit type column, which you see in column J. And you can use that a number of ways. In column J, you might want to keep track of if you're exiting with a full target, or if it's the first trade of the day, you could label it either in exit type or you can label that in one of your filters. Why don't we go ahead and we'll change that first one and we'll just call it full for full profit. We'll call it just full profit. The one below it can be partial. Like what if you employ money management and you stop yourself out with only a partial profit? Or what if your trade fails and actually has to stop and reverse to short? With this column J, we can keep track of the way we're exiting trades. Okay, so that just gives you flexibility. You don't have to use this, but you may want to analyze the results of those kind of exits. Okay, so let's jump back over to column B. B is very important because this is how we're analyzing our sessions. So this will all become more clear as we're entering trades. But on column B, you're going to want to label whether the trade is a morning trade, an afternoon trade, maybe a trade you're taking through lunch if that's something that you're doing. And then we're going to use the week and the month. Later on, I'll show you how to use those 2 fields. And then we can also specify our own labels. Like let's say we want to go in with 2 positions. One of them is a fixed, it's going to come off at a 2x target, for example, but a second position might come off with a trailing stop. Column C, we can change those. We can put anything we want, just like we did with the setup types and the exit types. We can type in a label, and then it's going to come, you'll see it in the drop-down menu in all the fields in column C. So that's a real powerful feature. It's just more ways to categorize and classify your trades. So because we're trading the pound US dollar, maybe we want to look at the European session, but we also want to look at the US session. I would recommend coming over to column K, and this gives us a whole nother set of filters and options that we can use. And we can go ahead and change that option 1 and call it Euro, and we can make the next one below that option 2 and call it US. So let's go ahead and assume that we're entering in some trades. So we'll just make some up right now. We'll go ahead and put in the date, I don't know, March 17th, 2010, and we'll just say that it's the morning session. So you could decide what you want to call as morning or afternoon. Our power of quitting tools are going to be based upon these labels. And we're going to call this a fixed trade. We're only doing this as a 1-position strategy. So in column C, we'll just label that fixed. And let's say we're taking this trade at 2:15 a.m. That would be New York exchange time, so we're going to put in 2:15, and our buy is going to be, we're going to get long at 53.57, and let's just say we took our profit at 53.93. Notice over there in column L, you'll see an error flag came up. This is a really excellent feature, because what this will do is it's going to force us to keep our data correct so that it doesn't mess up our statistics. Basically, that is telling you that you have to enter in what type of trade it was. Column I is a mandatory column. You have to enter it in. Until you do, you're going to see that error flag. So we're just going to enter this in as a basic trade. This was a basic setup. We're going to click basic. You could use Alt with the down arrow, or you can just pull it off of the pull down menu, or you can type in basic. You could also set it up above and just put the letter B in that purple field above, so that from now on when you're typing, all you have to do is put in the letter B and you don't have to type in the entire word basic. Because when I'm back testing, every keystroke that I could eliminate means a lot to me, because it really adds up over time. That's why I always name my trade setups with one letter or two letters. B for basic, T for trail, PB for pullback. It just makes data entry that much faster. And then we're going to go ahead and, whether you decide to do this or not is up to you, but just to show you how it works, the exit type, we're going to say we came out with a full profit on that trade. Finally, because it was at 2:15 a.m., we're going to label it the Euro session. On this spreadsheet, I've decided that I want to track two separate sessions, the Euro session and the US session. And the way we use column K is how we can do that. So let's just say we only got one trade on the 17th. It was a nice winner, and our stop time has already occurred, and all of a sudden now it's a US session. It's still the same date, March 17th. We're still going to call it the morning, and we're going to go ahead and enter in the trade that takes place at 8:40. Let's see, New York time, 9:45 a.m. And so there is a nifty little feature called copy trade, and if we click on that button, we don't have to type in the data from that, from row 30. We can use the copy trade feature, which is pretty cool. And all we have to do now is change the time and our trade entry and exit. So we'll go ahead and change the time to 9:45, and let's say that in this trade we took a short trade. So we'll go ahead and delete those two fields, go over to the short column, and we got short at 53.48, and this trade took a small loss. We got stopped out at 53.56. And that was a pullback trade, by the way. And I'm just making these up. And of course, we moved our stops. Our exit type will be a shortened stop with some money management. We moved our stop and got out with a smaller loss. So we'll go ahead and change that exit type to move stop in column J. So we've got two separate sessions here, and we're labeling them differently with column K, and that'll allow us to do different kinds of separate analysis on each one later on as we go, if we decide we want to. Okay, so before we move on, I'm going to show you how we use the copy trade field, because the copy trade feature. This is an excellent feature, real time saver. Remember, we're just kind of entering trades in random here, just to kind of show you how to do it, what you need to think about as far as setting up some of these filters and labels and trade type setups and what have you. In the end, you're going to use a spreadsheet to fit your needs. When I'm back testing, sometimes I'll do a two-position strategy where I'll go in with the identical trade with the same time and the same entry. One of them will come off with a fixed target, and the other one will come off with a trailing stop, for example. So let's say that my trade at 9:45 this morning, on this log here we put it on the US session, let's just say I wanted to go in with two positions and trail a stop. Barry, could you please show us how the fast way it would be to enter in a second position?
Sure, TJ. Well, the simplest thing is regardless of where your cursor is on the trade log, you just hit copy trade. And now a little dialog box comes up. You don't have to type the trade you want to copy. You just take your mouse over here and you click the line that you want to copy in column A. As it says up here in the instruction, click column A of the row to copy, and it's only going to do one thing. It's going to copy it to the next row. So we've told it we want to copy this trade right here in line 31 to the next row. So once I've clicked that, I come over here and I hit OK. Now it's going to take everything from column A over to column K, and it's going to copy that to the next line. And now you can go ahead and edit it. Now a point here is that let's say you really didn't want to copy that. It wasn't what you wanted. That's okay. Just take your mouse, click in column A, drag over to column K. So you've now highlighted A through K, and just hit the delete key. And that trade's gone. Now that doesn't mess anything up. You didn't actually delete row 32. You just deleted the data in the data log. Let's click 31 again then. We'll hit copy trade, click line 31, say OK. It copies it. Okay, now in your example, you wanted to go do a trailing stop, so we'll just hit Alt down arrow, hit down arrow again to get to trail, hit return. Now we're at a trailing stop, and of course notice that the time's the same, the date's the same, the morning's the same. In a lot of cases, you might have, if that was a double trade, you wouldn't have even had the entry or the exit price in there and some of this exit type. You wouldn't have had that information. That's okay. You'd have just filled it in when you were finished. Does that explain it?
Yeah, exactly. So just to recap really quick, it's going to copy to the very next line. So you got to be careful that you're copying the last trade to copy it to the very next line below it. And then on column C, you'll notice that Barry changed the label to trail 1 because that's the second position. It's not going to go to a fixed target. That's based on our own trade plan, our own rules. Maybe we were going to put on an optional trade, in which case we would label it optional 1 or whatever you want. Remember, you can change that above in those yellow fields. You can title anything you want, and it's going to show up in that drop-down menu. And so the only thing we need to do to finish this trade then is we're going to just say that our exit, this trade actually did make some profit, and we actually took that down all the way to 52.87. It was a really nice big trade. And it wasn't a PB trade. We're going to change the trade setup type in column I to T for trailer. And we didn't move the stop in column J. We can just call that, we can just erase it and leave it blank. We don't have to call it anything. So we'll just leave that one blank, and that's the trade right there. So let's say that there's a couple things I want to go over before we move on. First of all, let's just say that this was the last trade of the week and we want a subtotal the week. Well, first of all, we can't see that. We need to go to basic view. See, right now we're entering data in the expand view, and that's why we can see over to the right all the trade type summaries, but what we don't see are the subtotals. We don't see the result of each trade. So that's not going to do you any good. In this case, we want to click on the basic view button, and that's very important. That's going to bring into view the total of each trade, and then we're going to get our summary subtotal for the 2 sessions. The 3 trades you can see are subtotaled. We made 89 pips, and you can see it there. But let's say that that was the last trade of the week, and now we want to see what our weekly total is. And we'll go through this again and again until you get it. But the important thing is that you skip a line, whether you're going to March 18th to start a new session or whether this is the end of the week, you always skip a line. And so in this case, we're going to put in the week. We're going to type in week or pull it from the drop-down menu in column B, and as soon as we do, we're going to subtotal all the trades that took place in that week. And in a little while, we'll look at another spreadsheet that's loaded with data, and we'll go through and look at weekly totals and monthly totals and show you different ways that you can work with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and erase that now, Barry, that weak subtotal. What I want to do is show you what happens if you accidentally make a mistake. Okay, so if we accidentally make a mistake and somehow delete a line, or we, instead of copying and pasting, we accidentally cut and paste. Like, let's say that we wanted to cut or get rid of the last trade on row 32, and we actually highlight the row or just those fields, and instead of hitting delete like we're supposed to, we accidentally hit cut, which would be Command X. You really never want to do that, but sometimes you might forget. So let's just say we accidentally forgot and we messed up the sheet, because what that's going to do is mess up all our formulas. And then you're going to, call TJ and say, oh no, what do I do? And I'm going to tell you there's a real simple fix. All you have to do is click the refresh formula button, and it will restore all your formulas back to where it's supposed to be. So by clicking that button, it does take a couple minutes, and we're going to go ahead and click it, and you notice the number sign REF over to the right there in AR. That's telling you there's an error. But now that we've clicked the refresh formula button, it's going to fix itself. Okay, so it finished refreshing the formula, and it put me down all the way to the bottom of the spreadsheet. And I want to get back to the top again, and here's a good time to show you that we have the navigation button sitting at the bottom of the spreadsheet also. And all we have to do is click on the go to first trade or go to date or whatever. By clicking that, it's going to bring us all the way up. And now everything's been restored. That's an amazing feature. It's going to save you a lot of grief.